Secretary, I've got some questions about the Philippines. I don't know whether you have anybody in the room
Yes,
who's...
Julie Heckscher will come to the table and be...
Just while... I'm not sure whether she's in the room or coming in from out the back, perhaps.
Will be. She's
here
right
she is.
here and she's on her way.
Well, I might start while she's walking up. I note that members of the UN Human Rights Council voted last year to establish an investigation into extrajudicial killings by security forces in the Philippines. That resolution was supported by Australia. Can you tell me what the current status of that inquiry is?
Thank you, Senator. Julia Heckscher, Head of the South East Asian Division. I'm just looking up the exact date. It's due to report back to the HRC, and I think it's the June session. I'm just trying to recall the exact date. If you give me a moment.
Yes.
But under the original resolution, there was a part of the resolution was to ask for a report on the situation and to report back to the HRC, and I think it's the June session that they'll report back.
Can you give me a quick outline of Australia's engagement with the government of the Philippines in terms of human rights?
I can.
And a bit of a broad brush assessment of...
The state of play?
Yep.
I can. So the current human rights situation in the Philippines and our engagement with the Philippines, we actually are very strong partners of the Philippines. We engage a great deal, you'd be aware, across development issues, trade and investment, all sorts of issues. We also have ongoing engagement with Philippines, for example, within regional organisations, within international organisations. So the relationship is both long and it's very strong. There are concerns that we have about the human rights situation in the Philippines, which is why we supported the human rights resolution, the resolution in relation to the Philippines in the HRC, as you mentioned last year. Some of our areas of concern, for example, include, as covered by the HRC resolution, the crackdown on illegal drugs and widespread extrajudicial killings, pressures on media freedoms, attempts to suppress government critics, proposals that the death penalty be reintroduced, for example. Those are some of the areas of general concern. We have raised our concerns both publicly and privately, and I think we've covered the Philippines in previous sessions here at Estimates. For example, Foreign Minister Payne has issued statements at particular times. We have supported, as you mentioned, the resolution in the HRC, but we have also raised the Philippines, or mentioned the Philippines anyway, in HRC engagements previously. We have engaged repeatedly with senior Philippines government officials on human rights concerns in Manila, but also here in Canberra and in Geneva as well. So through our development program is also another area that we do support human rights. For example, we have partnered with the Philippines Commission on Human Rights and the Asia Foundation to directly advance human rights in the Philippines. We have funded, to the tune of $1.4 million, the Asia Foundation to assist things like the caseload reduction in the Philippines Anti-Corruption Court. We have supported a program with the Philippine Commission on Human Rights to increase the capacity for human rights protection services and violations monitoring inside the Philippines. There are a number of other areas that we support and advocate for improvements in human rights, but those are just the broad brush.
Can I just, in addition to the crackdown on illegal drugs, the media freedom issues and the death penalty issues, President Duterte, in relation to the Filipino trade union movement, together with the Armed Forces Chief of Staff, has, in the context of all of these other issues, the war on illegal drugs, has likened trade union activities to a communist rebellion plot to overthrow the government. What's the Australian government's view of that? I mean, I might go on maybe, just to shorten the process. Earlier this year, the Philippine National Police, along with the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, launched the Joint Industrial Peace Concerns Office to restrict trade union activities in export processing zones. Is there an awareness inside the department about repression of trade union activity in the Philippines? A violent repression by the police force and Philippines Armed Forces?
Senator, I don't have any specific information on that right now. I can look to see if there's any information I can obtain and get back to you on that.
Yeah, I would.
I mean, we generally keep an eye on the human rights situation in the Philippines.
So on this issue specifically, there are multiple reports, and I appreciate you taking on notice, but there are multiple reports of Filipino security forces violently dispersing union strikes, surveillance of union members, including school teachers. So you can't tell me whether the department's monitoring that situation specifically in terms of unions and civil society now?
No, I can't, Senator.
Well, could you provide me an update? While you're doing it, there is, I'd be interested to hear more about what assistance the Australian government's providing to civil society organisations more broadly than the trade union movement in the Philippines. And finally, given that all the areas of cooperation that you touched on as you were going through your outline of your assessment of the relationship, there is, of course, extensive security cooperation between Australia and Filipino security agencies. I want to know what safeguards are in place to ensure that training and assistance provided by Australia in that context isn't used by Filipino counterparts to target trade union activists and civil society more broadly. I'd like to hear more about what the thinking is about that. I'm worried, frankly, that it's not on the department's radar at the moment because it is a high priority issue, a high profile issue within the Philippines itself.
Thank you, Senator. And I can, my system having crashed and
Yes.
just rebooted, I can tell you that on trade union rights, by the way, DFAT officials met with representatives from the Philippines Labour Movement on the 25th of February to actually hear a little more.
Yes.
So we are aware of the issue and we sought information. I apologise, I was waiting for my system to
okay,
reboot while sitting
The
here.
Wi-Fi in here seems to have slowed down all of a sudden. It's probably the rain.
So certainly we are monitoring it and we are listening to the concerns. I can't tell you anything more than that right now.
Well,
Senator, could
yes.
I just add though, please, because I must say, with the greatest respect to my colleague, I was a bit surprised when she said what she said, because as a general rule, we are in fact focused on, the whole question of rights in different countries comes to the fore in different ways. But trade union rights are an element that posts in countries where these things are, if you like, in dispute or under pressure. It's something that I would expect, particularly where we have a significantly sized presence, as we do across Southeast Asia, reflecting its importance to us in a bilateral relation sense. We would normally be aware of that. And as part of the training that we do, we're not aware of it, we'd be focused on it. Part of the training that a range of agencies, whether it's the AFP or Border Force or a whole range of ways that we do that kind of practical training, it is normal for there to be a human rights element involved in that quite explicitly. Now, whether it's within that
Yes.
explicit human rights element focused on trade unions, we'd have to check in relation to particular programs, but in terms of the design of the programs, it's certainly very much a part of our thinking.
We went through a few of the issues then. I would like to hear back on notice a response in relation to all of those issues and reflect on your last comment, Secretary. And I'd welcome anything more informally as well. It's an important aspect of human rights in the Philippines.
So that was specifically about the trade unions, but you asked questions about security engagement as well.
Yes.
Now, of course, those really are questions for Defence and AFP who are directly doing it. But I can say that a part of our engagement with the Philippines security forces, and this is certainly the ADF, and others is we don't provide support to activities associated with, for example, the controversial anti-drugs campaign. ADF conducts its operations under strict rules of engagement designed to ensure the actions of Australian forces are consistent with Australian obligations under international and Australian law. Specific questions about ADF and AFP training would need to go to the ADF and the AFP. But so those are general comments that I make about the way that we engage with security forces offshore.
Well, we'll look at your response and work out where we go from there. Thank you, Ms.
And I
Etchen.
know, Senator, in relation to my engagement with the heads, with the CDF and with the AFP Commissioner, these are issues which they are seized of as well.
Thank you, Secretary.
Very important issue. They know I have to go.
Oh, sorry, no, one question. Could you also take on notice how we're going in Mindanao and the work that we're doing there? And I know that we've done some very good work there, so I'd be grateful to get an update on Mindanao, but please take it on notice.